Hey everybody, I am joined right now by the producers of the Dark Side of the Ring series. You've gotten to see some exciting, probably not the best word, but captivating, dramatic stories over the past two seasons. They're coming back with season 3. I have Evan Husney and Jason Eisener with me right now. How you guys doing today?
Hey,
Good,
doing
man.
good.
So you guys are about a week out. 8 days away from the season 3 premiere of Dark
Wow.
Side of the Ring. It premieres on Vice on May 6th. We're finally starting to see more and more footage, trailers, more information. We just found out the entire slate of episodes yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
How you feeling this week, like coming into it? Because I know season 2, like even season 1, it was like this unknown thing, and then season 2, it had a following. Now it feels like the show's completely blown up, and it's very popular, well known. So how are you guys feeling going into this season and knowing that you do have such a dedicated audience that maybe in between season 1 and 2, people were still finding out what it is, and now it's like appointment viewing.
Well, it's kind of feels like, Jason and I are like in this band, and our first demo was cool, some people liked the demo. And then our first record, was cool, but people were still checking it out, and it did very well. And now the pressure's on for the follow-up record, but no, but it's awesome just to see the excitement around it. It's so cool to see, especially yesterday when we unveiled all the rest of the stories that we're doing for the rest of the season, and just how I'm always curious what people's reaction are going to be. But to be perfectly honest with you, most of the stories in this season are all stories that fans have highly requested that we do, and I think this season is very representative of that. Sorry if you can hear that.
Yeah,
Sound.
and when you said like 8 days away, I was just like, oh my god,
All right.
It's like we hardly have time to even think of it because we're working on 14 episodes this season, so it's just
we're still working on the show, by the way,
nonstop until the fall probably. So
I think people sometimes forget that
they do.
They think, oh, the show's done and it's just going to air. Like, more often than not, the first episode's done and you're still working on like episode 9 and 10. So
we only have 4 episodes done right now. So there's 10 more to finish as we're delivering them to air. So talk about episode 14. I think that's just begun its editing life cycle. So so there's still a lot left to do.
Are you still doing interviews, or is this just post-production right now?
Actually, as of a few days ago, we finished all of the filming for the entire season, or all the interviews, I should say. Not there's some reenactment stuff to do yet, but all the interviews have been shot for the most part, unless there's a couple one-offs we'll do here and there as pickups. But for all the principal interviews have been shot, and I think it's I think I tallied it. I think we did 105 interviews this season. I know. 105. So 105 interviews accomplished. Done.
That's amazing. Just in terms of like wrestling history and like archive, that's like with each interview is almost like 3 hours. So
it's like 300 hours, 350 hours of wrestling history.
Wow.
And then you have to put it into like 48 minutes or whatever time it is. So it's like.
And you got to make sure it unfolds and the story's there, and your aunt and uncle will think it's captivating. There's a lot of things you have to do to make sure that it's all flowing the right way. There's no formula to the show. Every episode kind of gets its own structure that we have to kind of solve, like a puzzle, and it's a lot, but it's great.
I think it was they said it about Dennis Rodman on The Last Dance, where he was like 15 minutes or whatever, and he was like out. Like, did you have anybody that was just like, here's my story, like I'm gone, or did it all kind of like sit
I didn't
down,
hear
like,
that. That's great. The only person that's ever done the like 15 minutes, I'm out, is John Stossel from season 2.
Okay.
Which is like, he's kind of the heel of season 2 in a lot of ways, but he's amazing. I mean, he said everything he needed to say. I mean, he did, and that's kind of amazing. But no, I mean, no one's been like that this season. I mean, nothing comes to mind, at least. Like all the interviews and everything we've done is, it's been great. The stuff that we've been getting this year.
Yeah, and I feel like by now, the people that you not only want in it, but the people that are participating kind of know what they're getting into. So not that they would do it to be rude. It's just, I mean, maybe some people that they're only like, oh, this is all I really have to say either way. But then you have somebody like, I'm gonna read some of the topics, but like,
sure.
Collision in Korea and the steroid trials, that it's not going to get that one story told in like one sitting. It's layers and hours, and there's so many things that I'm looking forward to, because I'll point out the steroid trials is something I kind of heard about when I was a kid, but it was more like I watched wrestling on TV, and then I found out like maybe a couple years after it was over, like, oh yeah, here's why they had this guy on TV, and like that's kind of the 94, 95 when I kind of knew what backstage stuff was. But you have Nick Gage on here, the Ultimate Warrior, the Dynamite Kid, FMW, the Plane Ride from Hell, which I feel like maybe this generation, it's maybe our steroid trial story of that early to mid 2000s. So there's so many different stories here that I'm looking forward to. Like, I hate to ask like if you have a favorite, but is there one that personally you learned maybe more than you thought you would about that topic than going into it?
Jason, go ahead. I think I know which one you're going to say. But...
I don't. Yeah, it changes for me because as we're working on episodes, you just, it's our nature just to become obsessed with the material, and so you're. I don't know. For me, I become obsessed with one kind of at a time. But I didn't know much about Nick Gage before going into.
That's what I thought you were going to talk about. Yeah.
And him, and I've never been like a big fan of like deathmatch wrestling. Just blood in general, it's like hard for me to watch some of that stuff. But he's such a captivating character. I became such a big fan of his, and just fell in love with him as like a person and just a personality. And he's so, when you're looking like, I love wrestlers that continue to blur the lines, and like a character that is believable is like Nick Gage. It's like he is his character. Like he's someone I totally believe in his gimmick. But then, I also like right now I'm really excited about the Grizzly Smith episode, because as a wrestling fan, growing up as a wrestling fan, like when you saw the Beyond the Mat documentary and you saw that moment with Jake the Snake Roberts and his father, and just like how their relationship is so estranged. And he mentions this story about his sister being kidnapped and possibly killed. And it's, it's kind of just briefly mentioned in that documentary, but we as fans have always wondered, like, whoa, like what's up with that story? Like, that probably there's probably a lot of trauma there that, is probably leaked its way into Jake's persona, and so for us to like dive down that, into that story and meet, some of his other family members like Rocket Robin and Sam Houston, like, you forget that Jake comes from a family of wrestlers. We always know, we've always heard about the Hart family, the Guerreros, the Von Erichs, but the Smith family.
No one calls them the Smith family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great point though, because you have all of these like the first families, so to speak, that come to mind, and like Jake comes from a wrestling family, and you don't often hear about that, whether it's lack of information or he is reluctant to talk about it. But I think,
Well, you'll get to see in the episode.
You'll
like,
see,
kind of
yeah.
why that's the case.
And I
for
think,
sure.
part of it is he's at a really good place in his life now. So
Totally.
between that
Yeah.
and I think this is the right vehicle for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's established, like I said, to open the call, over 2 seasons already of, you guys are taking the right approach to it. How important is not only having that catalog of like 2 seasons already of work, but you're tackling such a tough subject. So how do you go into it saying, like, not just, and I'm not just pointing out that story, but there's a lot of stuff in here like that maybe isn't talked about because of personal reasons or professional reasons. Like maybe it blows up kayfabe, maybe it's a legal issue. Like the steroid trials is the one that comes out in mind of that. But
sure,
do you have to sell people as much on, we're gonna tell your story the right way anymore, or is it kind of just accepted that, hey, this is what they've done so far, I'm in the right hands?
I mean, it's yeah. I mean, still, even though the show is quite successful, in the context of wrestling, we still have to definitely approach the stories in the right way. And it's interesting because I think approaching sometimes you approach wrestlers and they're like, yeah, I've seen the show, I love the show, would love to be a part of it, and it's very straightforward and all that. But family members, it's kind of a different thing because family members aren't really plugged into the show and or the wrestling kind of ecosystem. So it is kind of still we find ourselves having to not necessarily sell ourselves, but make sure that we're coming from the right place with telling the story. And we always try and find that before we approach anybody, like listen to our hearts, follow that. And a lot of these are difficult stories to tell and revisiting some pretty traumatic stuff. And we definitely want to make sure that we're not like exploiting that for our show that is somewhat successful now. We want to make sure that we're telling these stories, and there really is kind of a motivating factor or a purpose for it at the end of the day. And I think the Grizzly Smith one is a really good example of that because I think that even though Jake and his siblings Robin and Sam Houston, they've gone through they've come up through a pretty traumatic upbringing, and I think for them a huge motivating factor wanting to be a part of that episode was to try and help people, that if people who have been through similar things or they don't have or they don't know where to go or who to talk to, this is like what we've been through, and we've survived and come through the other side, and now it's our chance of kind of giving back. And so I think like for us it's really just finding that purpose in some of the darker stories, but also trying to find a way that it can be it can have some function.
There's so much to get into, and I appreciate your guys' time this afternoon. You guys can check out the season premiere Thursday, May 6th. It's going to be a 2-hour episode, the Brian Pillman story. We also found out Chris Jericho's back as a series narrator, which probably helps a great deal establish a voice of the show. You did Dark Side of the Ring Confidential, and Vice is getting a little more help in the wrestling department with MLW coming soon. So
that's right.
There's so many things that are coming out of this project. It's great to watch every week, and it's great to see how it's grown in now 3 seasons. And I can't wait to see the episodes that come out and see how it's received. And thank you guys for your time today.
Awesome.
I appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks, Bill.